Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hearst and Mom podcast. I'm Lauren Rose, and today we're talking to Shari Filsinger. She is the mom of two adult kids whom she released out into the world to live their lives. She lives in southern Wisconsin. She's a certified mental wellness and nutrition coach, an empty nest coach, and an author of a recently published book on her story about the transition of releasing her adult kids. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. This is great.
Let's start about talking about chronic pain because you have had chronic pain in the past. Just tell
Mhm.
us kind of your chronic pain story.
Um, yeah, it probably started, I would say, going back to high school. And a lot of stuff I've learned that it's sometimes it's what we're exposed to, meaning like being around certain types of people or eating the wrong kinds of food. But I just thought it was just me, and I just never talked about it. And then
Mm,
I remember I was in my 20s and I went to a doctor and they did a bunch of tests and they couldn't find anything. And at that point, you always hear of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue because I struggled with fatigue. And I still do, but it's been a journey that has led me to just try different modalities, different options that are available. And at this point, it's pretty good. But again, we talked about this earlier. I think like the stressors in life can make it worse. And
mm,
especially when you have like younger kids at home, that's you're struggling enough as a mom to try and do the right thing. And then when you're not able to, and you just feel, I at least felt like I was letting my kids down through my journey. But there is hope. And I feel that people just need to keep finding out more information, reaching out to more people, sharing what's worked for them, and just keep, don't ever give up because there's always hope and there's always solutions.
Yeah, I know a lot of us have tried a lot of different things. I had a lady come on another episode of my podcast, and she was talking about her chronic pain, and she has done some kind of modality where they wrapped her body in cat urine, and it didn't. I don't know why, and it didn't help. But it's like, people with chronic pain will try just about anything, and there are so many different reasons for our pain
Mhm.
that I think it's absolutely crucial that we don't give up because something might actually help us.
Right, right. No, it's true.
So, how did chronic pain affect you personally and your parenting and your relationships back when you were struggling with it?
I, because I struggled with anxiety. And I recently, it was so cool when you find something that really resonates with you. And all it came from was like somebody on YouTube had talked about health anxiety. And because I've struggled, as we know, like when your body is under stress, the pain gets worse. And I feel like in times, at least with my parenting, obviously when you get to teenage years, I mean, not all teenagers are bad. It's a challenging time for a lot of people. And when you struggle with something like this and it's kind of like a fight or flight thing, like when you go into like a panic or which can lead you to depression. And I just feel like it was hard, but it's kind of cool now that my kids have seen me like I've matured in my own way as an adult. And they'll tell me like, wow, you really like did a good job. It's cool when they say that to you. Like you did a good
Wow.
job and you're like, thank you. It really pays off, but it's hard until you get to that point. And yeah, I still struggle. Um, and tried a lot of different things, and I talked to you earlier about this. I really didn't want to just be dependent on medication because I just feel like long term that really does us no good. And to keep finding, things out there that I mean, I've never heard of cat urine before. I don't know
Me
if
neither.
I've had cats before and I didn't like the smell they left in my house, but
I know.
um yeah, I just think sharing this stuff with people and saying, I get it. I know how you feel in a different way. Um, but also being compassionate with yourself because we're only human and nobody gives us a guidebook on how to navigate life with kids. I mean, there are books out there, but it's everybody's story's different. And I always give I just give kudos to people who have, have gone through like cancer or other illnesses and they can still manage to stay positive because it is hard. It is hard. You take yourself down that rabbit hole and you don't want it to go too far before you get yourself out. And I think just having another person or a group of people to share your story with is huge because for so long I didn't feel like I had anybody because nobody, but I think now, post-pandemic, I think people are now more authentic because I do believe that the pandemic really opened people's eyes and hearts, but also, uh, I mean, before the pandemic, I never thought I'd write a book. Like that was not on my radar. But you just have to sometimes go through those times. Like we all had to navigate that whole 2.5, 3 year period. And I'm sure, I don't know about your situation, but yeah, I mean, I wasn't stressed about getting COVID. I think because things were so different, it stressed my body in a different way, which made my pain worse. So,
Yeah, I agree about people being more authentic these days
mhm,
because the pandemic was traumatic for all of us.
mhm,
It's like kind of group trauma, and I noticed that there started being more talk on TV and in real life and in commercials about mental health,
mhm,
and people actually started saying, yeah, I'm not doing all that well, I'm lonely, I feel isolated, I'm having anxiety, I'm depressed about the situation.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so I think that's maybe the one thing good that came out of the pandemic
mhm.
was just we're talking more about our mental health, which is really important.
It is important. And I know, like I told you earlier, I have struggled with my mental health and I thought I had it under control and I did pretty good through the first part of the pandemic, but then things kind of switched up with what I had been doing and I found that I was like not gaining new clients and I was just pushing myself and I was, the doubt gets in your head, which can lead to other symptoms. And I just feel like having somebody I can already tell, like just talking to you, the energy is so is so good because I don't know if you've ever been around somebody that's got like negative energy and
Yes.
you feel worse. It kind of squashes you down, and then for me that would make my pain worse. And
Mm.
that's another thing I've learned from the pandemic. I had to separate myself from certain people, people I thought that would be in my life forever. I had to just stop because it was toxic to my body and I don't need none of us need anything like that. And I think people have gotten more bold about putting up boundaries of what they will and won't accept. Um, yeah, I think that if I've learned just in the last couple of months since discovering I struggle with health anxiety that it's been we have to be we have to be true to ourselves. And if there's somebody in our life that is making us feel bad and it's making us feel worse, then we have to just put up boundaries. I just feel like that word I hear more than anything, even with my own kids. I mean, I've had to be honest and say, I don't want to argue with you. It doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't mean I don't agree with you. I just want to argue with you because that's another stressor that I don't need. And I think so many of us want to be right when we have an opinion, but there's a
Mm.
time when you just have to say, I don't want to deal with this. Life's too short. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think boundaries are really important for people with chronic pain and chronic illness. I mean, I think they're important for everybody,
Mhm,
but a boundary is like when you make a statement of what you're going to put up with, basically, for
mhm,
anybody who hasn't heard of a boundary. So it's not about controlling the other person or other people, it's about controlling your own behavior and what you're going to tolerate.
right.
And even saying no is a great boundary, and I know a lot of people, just in our culture, in our society, we're doers, we're go 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 kind of people, and so it's really crucial to say no sometimes because that's what our bodies need. And so I love that you're paying attention to your body and people who are toxic in situations that are difficult, and saying, okay, I love that person, I wanted them to be in my life, but that's not what's good for me.
Right. Right. You're right about the people don't know how to say no. And I think that's harder when your kids are younger because you kind of feel like you need to be involved, which I get, but it is okay to say no. You can't do everything. And I remember just always feeling a sense of competition. And unfortunately, now we have social media. And
Yeah.
I've had to put up boundaries for social media too, because I'm not everybody's going to agree with me, and I'm not going to agree with everybody else, but it's okay to just scroll past. And we don't always have to be right, what, and that's a thing. I think if we could all have conversations, but yeah, I feel that taking care of yourself, self-care is so important. Taking a bath,
Hmm.
taking a nap. I mean, it's okay. We all need sleep as long as we don't overdo it. And if you're not sleeping all night, then obviously that's a problem. But it's like just meditating, and I do yoga. So amazing. I love yoga. I mean, and you can do it on, I just do it. I watch my phone. I don't go to a class. I do it in my office because it loosens up whatever's hurting. And if you're able to go out and walk, take a walk. You don't have to do huge exercises. Just go clear your mind, get into nature. And that's huge for me. And it's better than anything else, like as far as like not being overly involved where it stresses you, but just doing what you can, because it makes you a happier person then. When you can get outside and you can enjoy nature and you can smell the flowers, you know what I mean? It's the
Hmm.
little things that make a big difference, and being
Oh,
grateful every
oh
day.
yeah, absolutely. So you don't deal, I guess, as much now with your chronic pain. How did you resolve that problem?
Well, it was kind of funny. My functional medicine doctor had just suggested a food sensitivity test. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that because, nobody wants to give up what they really like. And I had given up in the last 10 years, I'd given up dairy for the most part. I'm not saying I still don't have some, but I grew up in the dairy state, and that's all. I mean, we had milk delivered to our house when I was a kid, but I had stomach issues growing up. And when I got into my 20s, I was on medication for that. And when I went off dairy 10 years ago, those problems went away. So that was number one. The second was the food sensitivity test. And when it came back, of course, dairy was on there. I did have sensitivity. And there were some minor things on there that I had already pretty much tried to eliminate. But two of my favorites, I've always loved oatmeal. And I know this is weird because people can't imagine doing this every day, but I have oatmeal for breakfast every single morning because it fills me up and it gets me through to late morning when I can have a snack or something. And I always felt like when I ate other stuff, that because a lot of it had sugar, that it would break down really quickly and I would crave more of that kind of food. So I tried to stick with healthier nutrients. So anyway, I was allergic to oatmeal, and the other one was honey. And I mean, I go to a farmer's market and buy like tons of honey. So that was a huge one. And I'm like, oh my God, I
No.
can't do this. But I did it, and I found a replacement. Similar, just had like things like quinoa and some oats and grains and nuts, and did it. So I'm going to do this for 3 months. And it was funny. It was like after a month, I didn't even notice until all of a sudden I'm like, I don't have any pain. I have nothing. Not the way it was. And my type of pain was like flu, like when you're getting sick and you just ache and you're tired and you're lethargic. That's how I felt. But all of a sudden it was gone, and I was like, wait a minute. Oh my God. So I continued, and she said after 3 months you can go back and see if your feelings come back. And we were camping, and I'll never forget, like I had taken the regular oatmeal, and I'm like, I'm just going to try this, made it for breakfast. About 2 days later, I felt like that again, and I'm like, oh my God, it's working. It's what I'm eating. And so now I'm a believer that honestly what you're putting in your body could be causing it. And as hard as it is to think about giving things up, it's worth it because you feel better. Do I still sometimes get that? I think the the most the biggest problem I have is when I'm stressed. If I'm overwhelmed, if I'm stressed, I start to feel that way. And but it never really lasts. I can catch it. And I think sometimes it's mind over matter. I sometimes think like if you think that way, you can attract it to you. But if you try to like focus on something else, which is hard, because when you're in pain or when you struggle like I do, you can't think about anything else.
Yeah.
but sometimes it's what we need. And if that means meditation, if it means yoga, yoga's huge for chronic pain. I don't know if you've heard that, but it's really like really good. And you don't have to do like all the weird stuff. I do simple yoga. I'm not like flexible at all. You get more
Mhm.
flexible the more you do it, but I'm not one to like put my legs straight up in there. That's not me. I'm just doing, but stretching is so important, especially with chronic pain, I believe. Because I just feel like if you're just immobile, your body just kind of like shuts down. So I recommend food sensitivity tests, and you can I think you could probably do it on your own. I don't know. My doctor recommended it or prescribed it. What they do is I went to a place where they drew the blood and they sent it in, and then it came back like 2 weeks later and it was, it's an investment, but to me, I'm like, if it makes me feel better, I'm worth it's worth it to me.
Right. I agree with that. I probably need to do one of those because I don't I don't eat all the best like a lot of us don't in this
Yeah,
society.
yeah, yeah,
So let's kind of transition into parenting. So you've written a book about releasing your adult children into the world, and generally, most of us are going to do that at some
yeah.
point. Talk about your experiences with that.
Um, it's funny. You don't really think about it until it gets you're close, right? Usually when your kids start high school, you start to think about it, because you're so caught up in all of the craziness that comes with, kids in school and kids in activities and your general parenting stuff. For me, my son, he's my oldest. Um, boys, I don't know, maybe not all boys, but mine was like not really organized in planning like what he wanted to do, and we didn't force our kids to go to college. And I always tell people, not everybody's meant to go to college. If they go, that's
Right.
great. But I've learned, especially in the last 10 years, my kids are both engineers, and I'm blessed because I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college. And I kind of wasted a lot of money going to college. Where my husband went, he went and got his accounting degree, but he hasn't even ever done that. So I tell people 9 times out of 10, you really don't even end up doing what you went to college for. But there's so many kids nowadays that feel pressure to go to college, and they shouldn't be pressured because we're all different and we all flourish in different areas. And I just feel like just letting them decide. And if kid at 18, like I look back and I'm like, how do you know what you want to do when you're 18? Like seriously, I just like figured out what I wanted to do 10 years ago. So yeah, so my son was I had to push him more. He was like more um I shouldn't say popular. He was social and very active in sports, and had to kind of like he played soccer. And I say this in my book. I say, I kind of think I pushed him to do something that I assumed he wanted to do, which was play soccer in college. And when he finally told, after I made him tour all these colleges, and then he said to me, Mom, I really don't want to play soccer in college. And I don't want to go to those little schools because they're like the size of my high school. I want to go to a big university. And I was like, that's when it finally hit me. It's like, it's not about me, it's about
Mm.
him. And we always want our kids to have what we didn't have. And we were fortunate to be blessed to be prepared to send them to college. I was not. So I had tons of student loans, and I knew that I didn't want my kids to have to. My husband and I couldn't get married till we paid off my student loan, and that was like 3 years. So it was kind of like, but now kids are like, they're spending so much money on an education, and so they come out with all these loans, and then they don't even really know what they want to do, which is kind of sad. Um, so yeah, my son went to a 4-year college. He went for 4.5 years, and he's a mechanical engineer. He lives in Minneapolis, 29. My daughter's almost 26. She went to school in California to be study physics, play a sport. She was a lacrosse player, and she wanted to play somewhere where she could play a lot of the year. And then after 3 years, she was able to transfer back and finish her degree in St. Louis, at Washington University. And I'm blessed because honestly, like my kids, they didn't get my brain. They're engineers. I was like a business major. My daughter's a biomedical engineer now in the process of looking for a job. She wants to move to Denver. So my kids have never moved home since they left, which is good, but it's hard as a mom because it's bittersweet. I have friends whose kids live in the area. They see them all the time. I see my kids because I spent a lot of time with them over the holidays. And now my daughter's in this transition to move to another state. I probably won't see her till April, but we have amazing relationships. We Zoom, um, we FaceTime, we text. I know what's going on in their lives, which makes me very grateful. It still doesn't mean I don't get sad because I do want to spend more time with them. Neither one of them are in relationships, which as a mom, I'd like my kids to be married, but you know what? It's okay. It's about them. But they still come home for the holidays. A lot of my friends whose kids are married and already having kids, they don't see them at the holidays. So I feel like, so we talked about gratitude. I'm just grateful for what I've gotten, that my kids still care about me, that we've had issues. Well, everybody has issues, but we've overcome the hard times. And so looking back, as hard as it was, yeah, I just struggling with chronic pain was hard. You and I talked about this earlier, like you feel like a failure at times. You get down on
Mhm.
yourself. Like you, I didn't have a job and I was like, what am I going to do? I didn't want to be home all the time. I wanted to be helping people. And that led me right before my son graduated 10 years ago to get into nutrition because I knew I needed to make changes in my own life. And if I'm going to make those changes, I want to share them with other people, what's helped me. And now they say, my kids will say, wow, mom, I'm so proud of you. Like you really made lots of changes and overcame risk factors that my dad had heart disease. He died after his fourth heart attack. So that shows you what I came from. And I
Mhm.
didn't want to. So I think a lot of my situation, and this is just all pulling it together recently, is fear and worry about going down the same path my parents did. I didn't want to, and which made me kind of fearful of doctors too because of my what I had to experience with them when I was growing up. So I always tell people kind of like dig deep into your own past and think about what could be causing the pain. Because you want to enjoy the time with your kids when they're home. You don't want to regret any of it. And, I think what you're doing is awesome. You just want to help people through your own experience. I think that's the biggest blessing we can all give other people.
Yeah, so my daughter's 11 right now, and we have a really close and wonderful relationship that I'm hoping it'll stay that way through her teen years and all of that. But like part of me, the selfish mom part of me wants her to just live here forever, get a job, great, get married, have kids, but at least live next door to me or something. However, the the healthier side of me that's been through lots of therapy knows that that's not healthy, that she needs to go and live her own life. So like, how can I or other parents prepare for the transition of having to release our kids into the world?
Yeah, I like how you did that though, that see, some parents don't know that. And I think because I came from a very codependent family, I stayed close. I went to college close. I moved away for one summer and then moved back. But you kind of get a feel for what your daughter, she's 11. Is that what you said? She's 11 now.
Yeah.
In the next 2 years, I mean, you're already seeing her personality and the type of person she's becoming. And I just, let her take the lead. Obviously, if she's doing something that's not safe, you're going to obviously say something. But the closer they get to teen years, and then through the next five, after like probably till like, well, obviously from like 15 to 18, it's like they're pushing away more. And it might seem hard, but that's part of the process. And as hard as it sounds, and as much as you want your kids to be close, it's like technically our goal is to raise them up so they can go take care of themselves, right?
Mhm.
We give them the tools, we teach them hopefully financial stuff. They know how to hopefully do laundry. They can go shopping for food. And as you and I don't know if your daughter does this with you, but I think it's really good to let her have a say in, say, like shopping for food. I don't know if she likes to cook. My daughter loved to cook, so I would let her take part in that. And then when she got her driver's license, she actually worked at Target. So if she was working, she'd say, "Hey, I'm going to pick up this and this and this for dinner." I'm like, "Okay, that's," and of course, she used our credit card back then, but it's okay because she was learning how to do that. And I think just giving them like jobs around the house, responsibility, being responsible for cleaning their room, being responsible for helping to cook a meal. If there's an animal, being responsible for taking the dog on a walk or the cat or whatever you do with the animal. Um, and spending time. Is your daughter your only child?
She is, yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure you do this like special nights out. Go for dinner, go to a movie, go to a concert, do something that you both enjoy because it does go super fast. And so is she in fifth or sixth grade?
She's in fifth right now.
Fifth grade, yeah. So, and will she go to like a middle school next year or junior?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
Yes.
another step, right? It's like another like going. My kids went to a small, it was part of the public school system, but it was a charter school and where parents had more involvement. And then they went to a larger middle school. And that's when I got more involved. And with my son, he could care less that I was there. He'd see me, but then my daughter, when she's 3 years younger, this was her. She was very independent. When she would see me in the school, she'd like walk the other way. But
Wow.
that's okay because that's her, right? And she just wanted to be her own person and she doesn't want mom, "Oh, Abby, give me a hug." She was just like, so I just say, give them responsibility. I'm sure you do that already. And then the closer you get to high school, just start thinking about like yourself and how, because it is a challenge when they leave. And I see in some of the empty nest groups I'm in, it makes me sad because these moms have no other like thing to focus on. And they're just so devastated. And the fact that you're doing this and you're helping people, you've already got a foot in the door, and keep building on that. Keep doing things that you want to do because if you don't have those passions or a hobby or connections or a group of people that you can count on, it just drags you into loneliness. And you know how that is. I mean, struggling with chronic pain,
Mhm.
how hard that can be, but you've already taken the step towards, you know, not just helping yourself, but helping other people is, I think, a huge thing. So I don't know if that
Yeah, those
answers
are
your question.
no, it does. You said, several good things. One being, teach them responsibility so they know what to do when they leave. When I left home at 19, it was a spur of the moment decision to do. And it was like a week or two later, I was on the phone with my dad, and he said, "You're not going to make it because we haven't taught you what you need to take care of yourself in life."
Oh,
And my thought was, well, I'm 19. That's kind of been your job the last 19 years.
yep.
So, I figured it out on my own. But teaching them all of these things, and my daughter's, really interested too. She's like, they don't teach things in school that I really need to know for life, like how to do taxes and how
Right.
to this, that, and the other. I'm like, you're absolutely right. That's the parent's job. And
It
you also
is.
talked about spending time with our kids, which is really important to me, is just to be present
Mhm.
as much as possible with her.
Right.
She and her dad actually have a father-daughter dance coming up this weekend, which is really cute. And she and
Oh,
I spend a lot of time doing crafts and playing and just, I don't know, talking and things like that. But also, like you said, having some kind of hobby or an identity other than just being our children's parent.
right.
Because
Yeah.
I've definitely felt like that for a lot of my motherhood, that
Yeah.
that is my identity.
Mhm.
And so I'm definitely branching out and doing other things and creating community
Right.
so that hopefully when she does leave, I'm not going to be completely, I'll be sad, sure. I think that's
Right.
perfectly normal, but that I won't be completely lost about what to do and devastated.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really, it's because you've been kind of, even though as they get older, you lose more and more control, but you've been that control, right? And you can't, when they leave, I feel like the worst thing you can do is make them feel guilty.
Mm,
I've learned myself through my own experience that by saying to them, when are you coming home? I miss you. And it's like, okay, that's about me. I got to make it about them.
mm,
I have to give them a reason to want to come home. And they do. I mean, that's been the best thing. Is like we might not see each other for a couple of months, but when we do, because we keep in such close contact, it's like we've never been apart, right? And they can live. I mean, my daughter's moving from 5 hours away to 13 hours away, but I'm actually
oh,
excited because I love Colorado and I have friends in Colorado and I'll be able to go visit her and spend time out there. And the other thing I wanted to like talk about too, which I think is so important because we all do this and we all want our kids to be involved, is don't over involve them because time goes so fast. And if you lose that time in middle school because they're so busy, it's going to get harder in
mm,
high school because there's even more things to be involved in. And then friends become more important. You know what I mean? Because they they're developing their own identity. And I just feel like if you can, when you can control the amount of activities that they can be in, it makes it better, your relationship. And then they really want to, like when even my son, you know, when I thought he wanted to play college soccer and he told me,
mm,
if you would have told me that sooner, it would have saved me a lot of time looking at colleges that had soccer programs. And that really wasn't, I was looking at that because I assumed you can't assume, especially if your kid's in a sport and they just love it. That doesn't mean they're going to love it their whole life. And 9 times out of 10, they're not going to be professional athletes.
right.
Or if they're like in drama, they're probably not going to be actor. I mean, I'm not saying that can't happen, but you know what I mean? The odds are slim, but they can still have a passion to do it, just not all the time. My daughter used to ride horses and she when she finished 8th grade, the horse we were leasing for her was being sold. And she wanted us to buy her a horse. And we're like, no, because that's not our passion. You can do that when you're an adult. A horse is a lot of responsibility, and we don't want to have that responsibility. So from that, but she was mad, of course, but she moved on, and that's when she started playing lacrosse. And I think that had to happen for her to go move from an individual sport to a team sport where she could develop camaraderie. But I just encourage parents. Our kids are so busy and this world is so crazy. And I just think there's so many things. I just think family is so much, you know, and do what you can to make the memories because before you know it, she'll be leaving. Maybe she won't. Maybe she'll be your neighbor. I hope that for you.
Thanks. So we've talked about preparing for the transition, and you touched on, one way that we can release them well by not making them feel guilty and saying, well, when are you
Mhm.
going to come home? I miss you. Do you have any other tips for releasing them well?
Um, yeah, because it's hard. It is. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's the day we took my son to college, even though he went like 20, he went to university 20 minutes away, which was great. In hindsight, I'm glad he did because it prepared me for my daughter leaving 3 years later. But I'll never forget. I still do this. So we had this picture taken outside the dorm, and that was the point when I realized like I need to get my health. I need to take my health back because I looked at that picture of myself and I'm like, oh my God, that was terrible. That was the number one. I remember that day moving him into the dorm and he was living with a friend from high school and the friend's parents were there and it's a small room and they're like not leaving. So there was no room for us. And finally we're like, we just need to leave. And we walked outside, did the picture, left. And I remember getting home, and this is something that still sticks with me. He played soccer and he had a habit of putting his sweaty, smelly soccer clothes in the washing machine and then not starting it. So I would open the washing machine, and you get this whiff of this. that happened that morning, and this was so bad. I took those clothes out, held them to my nose, and started crying. I was like,
Oh,
oh my God, but it's like, that's a family thing we can laugh about now because that is hard. I'd walk past his room. My office is his room. It's where I am right now. And yeah, I have memories but it was hard. I mean, walking past it and seeing something and looking at a picture, or taking a medal or a trophy but you just, that's why I say just focus on you at that point and be there for your child. But it's like, not to make them, like I said, not to make them feel guilty. Nowadays, it's so much easier with texting. And I think about when I was growing up, like I would go weeks without talking to my parents because we had to make a long distance phone call. So I always think I don't want to make them feel guilty by texting them all the time, which I did. I know I did it, but I just tell people like sometimes they're going to ignore you. And then a lot of parents will be like, how come they don't respond? And I'm like, because they're making their way in the world. And who wants to talk? If you look back at your own experience, like I didn't want to talk to my mom all the time. I'm like, I love my mom, but I'm like, Mom, get a life. So I kind of like, I always use that as a comparison. Like think about what happened with you when you moved out. And so let me ask you this. You said your dad said that to you when you moved out. Did you ever go back home or did you
nope,
stay? Good for
nope.
you. You made it work.
I did. I figured things out on my own, and now luckily with search engines, you can search online anything that you need to know, how to do taxes, etc. But yeah, I figured it out, and I think him saying that made me even more determined to make it on my own.
So you did it and you can do it. And now it is. We've got, as I call it, Google University. We can find
Hmm.
anything out. And we made mistakes, but we learned, and our kids will make mistakes, and we can't like bail them out all the time. I think by continuously bailing them out of a situation, of course you're going to help them, but we have to give them the option to like try to figure it out on their own because they are capable. And I mean, you were 19. That's young. And that's a hard thing to hear from a parent. Like, what? Like, I don't think like my parents really taught me either. I don't feel like financially, I happen to marry somebody who's very good with finances, but I was not. Um, when I got student loans, I had parties. He did all this
Hmm.
stupid stuff. But my kids are so like they're good at that. They like they plan, they invest, they do all the stuff I was never taught. So that's like you deserve kudos for that. And because of your experience, you're gonna be fine. And I'm sure your daughter's learning a ton based on and share I don't know if you've ever shared it with your daughter. I think it's important to share our experience with them.
Hmm.
Because
I
when
agree.
she gets older, she might not care, but right now she's young, so she'll still listen to you.
Oh yeah, she's really good about, asking big questions and
Right.
listening to what we have to say. So I know that like we're very influential to her right now.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
that's important to know, so that we can be intentional about what we're teaching her and how we're responding to her and answering her questions in an appropriate way and things like
Right.
that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So other than like focusing on yourself and making sure that you're not living in your identity as just not just a mom, but you're just living in an identity as a mom, are there other ways that we can navigate this new normal of having our kids out in the world?
Um, I pray.
uh
Prayer when you can't do anything else, right? And I journal. I started journaling. I haven't journaled for more than a couple of years, but my journaling actually led to me writing the book because of my emotions with my daughter. You know, I always wanted the mother-daughter relationship where I could like do things with her. And when she moves away, it's not possible. But when we are together, we make up for it. Um, that's the biggest thing, I think. I never believed that so much as I have in the last 5 years. Like, I mean, if you have a faith, which I do, and I believe my faith got me through it, my faith has gotten me through a lot of things. And yeah, when you can't like control it, you just have to give in and get it on, at least for me, get it on paper or go into a closet and scream at it.
Mm,
Or and connect with other parents,
mm,
share what you're going through. And I wish well, and I did. I felt like with my daughter, um, it was weird. I mean, she played sports, and I just think like girls, the moms on that team were so controlling of their daughters. And my daughter and I were very much kind of the black sheep, meaning we didn't follow the crowd, right? We just kind of, that's how she's always been, and that's how I've always been. But I say just, I don't know, you got to do what's right for you and not feel like, not try to compare yourself too much to what
mm,
other moms or kids are doing, because everybody's got a different story. And I just, I mean, social media's got its pros and cons. I've just had to really limit myself in the last couple of years from just looking at the comparison, because having kids that live in different states and then having friends who have kids close who see them all the time, you can't help but feel like, why? But again, I keep telling myself my goal was to raise them and to send them out. And when you look back on the early years, you know, when they're babies and they depend on you entirely, that'll look simple to you compared, as hard as babies are, the screaming, the crying, the diaper changes, the late nights, the early mornings, you they were with you all the time. And yeah, I think back to like the time I could put my daughter in a backpack and carry her out with me. And you
oh,
don't, you just, it's just different, but to have people to talk to about it and not be ashamed of your feelings, and not live in fear, because they figure it out.
mm,
There's only so much we can do. But yeah, you did your job well when they can go out into the world. And if they go out and they come back, that's great. If they go out and move to another state, at least mine are in the country. I have friends who have kids in other countries. So I'm kind of
mm,
like, that would be hard. But they get a place to travel to. So that's, you navigate it, but yet you find a new normal, and it's not bad. But change is hard for anybody. But it's how we grow. So yeah, it's a good, adult kids are awesome. I'm like
mm.
really, I'm loving it. I wish I could see them more, but it's okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely not looking forward to releasing my child into the world. I just, I'm just afraid that I'm going to get really depressed about it. But on the other hand, like, I know that that's what's best for her, whatever it is that she wants to go do and whatever her dreams are, then I'm going to want to support that. So on the outside, I'm going to be very supportive
Yeah, yeah.
and positive.
What I encourage is to in the next couple of years, or even now, start thinking about, put yourself out there all those years and write things down. What she could be doing, where she could be going, but what you like to do. And you can't imagine it now because she's still here. She's in this, but it's okay to like think about it. I think the more people prepare, the better off they are. And I don't think any parent, it's ever too early to prepare. I don't, because I know for me, I mean, really, we started thinking about it when they got to high school, but it's just a new normal. And just know there's people out there to walk you through it. We'll stay connected. I'll walk you through it.
Is there anything that you think you would do differently as far as letting your kids go?
I think I would be less stressed. I think I would be less controlling. I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about this, and the woman, she has a daughter in her 30s, and her daughter kind of struggled. Um, she felt like she yelled too much. There were situations, and we all do this, where we think we're doing the right thing as far as like discipline or parenting, and we lose it. And then we go, oh, why did I act that way? It's like, it's an embarrassment, but yet it's part of the process. There isn't one parent out there who hasn't said something that they wish they could take back. But I I'll give you one example. So when my daughter went for 3 years out to a small liberal arts school in California, and she's been very independent. And her second, she came home for part of that summer after. She ended up living with my son, which was good. She just liked her independence, which was fine. Um, she wanted to take her vehicle out there, and the only way to get it out there is to drive it. And of course, I didn't want her to drive it, right? So I said, I'll go. And it turned out to not be the most pleasant trip. I was still trying to control her. There were just lots of little ups and downs, and just, but looking back, so there was a point where I told her, I said, I'm going to get out of the car. We were in California, and I'm going to rent a car, and I'm going to go to the airport myself, because I think you need to just be on your own. As hard as that was, I'm glad I went through it, because it helped me to really grow myself and to know that she's not that little girl anymore. She's an adult, and she's got stresses, and me throwing guilt at her was only making it worse. So yeah, that was hard, but I you have to go through those times. You do, because life is not perfect. And when we're living on the mountaintop and everything seems perfect, we can't imagine. And I think when you go through the hard times, it just makes you, when you get back up, you're like more grateful that you did experience it. Just like you said earlier, like, through what you experience, you're helping other people. When you came to that realization, that helps you, not just you, but other people. So yeah, we'll all have regrets, and we'll all have, I just say, we're gonna have to go through it. Nobody can prepare you for it, but just know that it's okay. If we do things we kind of regret.
Right. Like you said, we all do, and we can hopefully look back and see things that we could have done differently, and
Right,
if needed, apologize to our children for the things that we didn't do right.
right. And that's it. Acknowledging that you're not perfect, right? And when you say that about your dad, I think that's big that he said that. I mean, I don't know if he was not prepared when he left home, but to acknowledge that to you, and I mean, yeah, you should have taught me, but you know, by him telling that to you, I think it made you feel like, well, maybe I can do this on my own. I don't need somebody else. But you're already giving your daughter the skills. I can just tell. She's
We're
probably
trying to.
yeah. It's the next step. Well, okay, it won't be the next step, but the driver's license is a big thing. That's hard to let go. Like, no, no. But sometimes it takes pressure off of you then too. If they're responsible drivers. But yeah, there's
Right.
all the steps that are involved in releasing them.
So you mentioned your book. What's your book called, and where can we find it and you?
My book is called Nobody Told Me It Would Be This Hard. It's navigating life with adult kids. It is on Amazon. It's both in print and then ebook format. And it's my story. It's very short. It's, short chapters. And I've had people say, like, wow, like, this really spoke to me, because it's mainly just, it's not like telling people what they should and shouldn't do. It's just saying, this is what I did, and this is what I recommend. I have a chapter in there on, I have a couple friends, their kids struggled during the pandemic, and so they had to move back home. And unfortunately, there's mental health issues, and some kids they just don't have the confidence to be able to leave. And that's called failure to launch, but it's not a bad thing. It's just something that they need extra time to prepare to go out into the world. Um, that, I was back and forth when I was that age too. I went to college and I moved home, and then it was like, yeah, it's just, it's a big stop. But I give you credit. I mean, at 19, that's to not ever go back home is a huge accomplishment. I see your daughter, but like I said, she'll, if she doesn't live next door to you, she'll live down the street.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope we're close.
Yeah. So that's, yeah. So and I'd like to write another one, I guess, but right now it just kind of talks about like what I experienced with both my kids, like how one was more prepared and the other one not as much. And basically just all we talked about, like giving them the tools and the skills and teaching them. And you're right, the schools should be teaching them some financial stuff. It's really sad that they don't. The important stuff, I know when my kids were in school, they still had like cooking,
Mhm.
but I had classes like, I think it was consumer ed that I had that taught you the basic stuff. Like back then, when we wrote checks, nobody really does that anymore, but that was a big thing, to learn how to be able to go out, go to a store, write a check, pay your rent, do kind of the basic accounting stuff, just to know how to pay your bills,
Yeah.
which is huge. So, but yeah, it's a journey. I can tell you're going to be great.
I'm not so sure, but
You
I'm gonna
don't think
try.
so, but I can tell.
I'm gonna certainly try. Well, thank you for coming on and talking about this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any health, parenting, or life advice. For my freebie 30 ways to relieve pain without taking a pill, go to ithurtstomom.com/tips. If you have comments, suggestions, or want to be on this podcast, just email me at ithurtstomom@gmail.com. I wish everybody a blessed and pain-free day.